Hello and welcome to another episode of the Serie A Chronicles with me, Mina Rizuki, and as always, I'm joined by Nikki Bandini. We are somewhat recovered from all the things that have happened this weekend. It's been a roller coaster of emotions, I'm not going to lie, but this is a fascinating Serie A campaign. I mean, Nikki, just as I'm about to give up on football, I've had enough, I'm like, this is not the career for me anymore, it's really bothering me, all the refereeing, all this and all of that, and all the agendas and discussions and arguments. And then it always pulls me right back in with either fantastic performances or entertaining drama. I don't watch enough reality TV, so this is where I come to get it, And I just thought it was a brilliant week. And I don't know whether it's a brilliant week because so many of the teams that you expect to be good are really disappointing. Is this a bad Serie A season? Are the bad teams actually a lot better than we used to think? I don't know even what kind of take to take from all of it. But how have you been feeling?
I mean, first of all, you obviously should watch. I think everyone needs a dose of trash TV. Everyone needs something, and it doesn't have to be reality TV. But I think everyone needs something lowbrow. So I generally I feel at any given moment I have one series on the go. It's my sort of.
Which one is it now?
My bad series. And well, I am slightly struggling at the moment because I'm sort of trying to find something good to get into to be that bad series. I've been doing a little bit of The Circle on Netflix, which is okay. It's not, I feel it's not scratching that itch in quite the right way. Sometimes you get a show that really, for whatever reason, just tickles you. For a while, I really enjoyed Selling Sunset, which is awful. It's awful.
Oh, I watched that. That is fun.
But for a while, that was oh yeah, just what I need to not think. Producer Simon says,
Love is Blind, I watched.
I like that for a while, but it's a bit too silly though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit too much, isn't it? What's Tulsa King?
I don't know Tulsa King. It's Producer Simon in the document. Do you know one which Producer Simon might appreciate this one? I did do a while ago, Married at First Sight Australia, and I really enjoyed one season of that. And then I found out that literally none of the couples stayed together. I'm sorry for spoilers, anyone who watched. No one ever in this show stays together. And I was I can't do it anymore. I need to believe in love, Mina. I need to believe in.
Can I just say my boyfriend thinks he's the most intelligent person in this planet. And sometimes I'm going to say I think he might be. Yeah. A lot of the time I only ever really fancy him when he talks and I don't understand anything he says. And then I'm those hearts. Anyway, but I'm constantly shocked by his decisions over what to watch. Yeah. Most of the time is the Kardashians. Okay. That he's obsessed with.
Oh my God.
Say yes to the dress. And I was no, I mean, what is this? What is this? And he's sit down. And I'm no, I'm not watching this. Or there's one about people who
Is he trying to send you a message, Mina? Is he trying to send you a message?
I really hope not. But the other one is that people travel and then get locked up abroad or something, and they're always bringing up existential debates would you save me if I went to jail? And I'd be well. And one time I actually engaged in this debate and he didn't talk to me for 2 weeks. So I was right, we're not going to watch any of these shows anymore. We're going to have these shows impacting our relationship. He's I can't believe you said you don't know. And I was all I asked is, did you commit the murder? It would honestly,
Anyway. I feel I've sidetracked because I've just noticed in our running document, Producer Simon subtly dropping in how long we've been talking for. To answer your question, Mina, it has been great. So, because you actually did ask me about football, it's my fault. It's not your fault. It's
always our fault.
Yeah, it has been great soap opera drama. I mean, this weekend, the football was bonkers this weekend, Mina. I mean, you thought we'd sort of got off to a start on Saturday with Inter imploding at the end against Monza in a game they should have won. I mean, look, they should have gone 3-1 up. There was a premature whistle, a goal that should have stood when you saw the replays of it. Doesn't happen. I understand why they're angry about it. But they then blow it at the end and you think, wow, like literally, like just like Acerbi said last week when they beat Napoli, doesn't mean nothing if we don't beat Monza. Well, they didn't beat Monza. And then on Sunday, we get both Rome clubs from sort of opposite directions involved in games where one team is up 2-0 after the 80th minute and they both end in 2-2 draws. It was a bonkers weekend to me now, and I don't actually know sort of in the end almost like which one is like the sort of biggest one to start with. I guess probably it's, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but Milan Roma seems like the most impactful.
Yeah, it is. And you I guess when you look at some of the defending that's going on, you know, and the ability to really just play dirty when it's required, that is a little bit worrying for me. It's like you have to read the game at the end of the day, and you have to do what you can to make sure that teams don't manage these comebacks, especially when it's not in a number of minutes. And it's a little bit like, this is not my Serie A. This is not the Serie A that I knew growing up. I've never witnessed, like, I mean, there's always been drama, and obviously this happens, but it's a little bit like it's crazy what Lazio is doing. It's crazy how Milan let go of that, you know, and it's quite shocking. So I would say, yes, that was probably, like, Milan-Roma was the game that I felt disappointment throughout the whole entire match. I mean, this was a very interesting game, and actually I think we should probably start there. So Milan go 2-0 up, and I'm sitting there watching 40 minutes of the minimum 40, if not like 42 minutes of the first half was basically all Milan, you know. It was controlling possession, dominating, creating chances, you know. Obviously don't score goals, but it's just them just having a great time controlling, especially with Bennacer in the middle. I mean, I think he's just so fantastic to watch all the time. I think we'll get on to him a little bit later. Second half starts pretty much the same. There was a point where I was like, I can't watch this anymore. It's so dull. Like, I was so disappointed because I genuinely had been really looking forward to this match. I thought this was going to be very interesting. I personally had thought that this would be a game that would be over 2.5 goals, you know, both sides scoring, a little bit of action, a little bit drama. And I was annoyed that Roma, with everything that they do have, with Dybala back, with Tammy Abraham, weren't going to do more. And then Bennacer comes off, and Giroud comes off. And unfortunately, some of those substitutions were needed, and they did, and the alternatives, you know, didn't produce what we thought. And you could see there's perhaps a lack of squad depth. You could say whatever it is, but Roma have been the side that have been brilliant to watch from set pieces, right? I mean, 10 goals of their 21 goals come from set pieces. That is a 45% average. I mean, that's ridiculous. And then to concede twice in 7 minutes like that, it angered me so much that I don't know whether I was proud of Roma or so destroyed at Milan, if that makes sense. I was like, I don't understand how you do this, and I don't understand how Pioli could have allowed this to happen. But obviously it's not like all his fault. And I can't believe Roma, who didn't do anything for 85 minutes, didn't have a single shot on target till the 87th, managed to pull it off and get a point. I don't know whether to applaud them or be angry with them that they didn't show up until the very end, and maybe they could have actually won this match.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, it was like, it's not new, is it? Like, when we get a big game with Jose Mourinho in it, this is like decades old information. You sort of expect to see him not be overly adventurous, to use that low block and to camp out a bit. But it just felt so lifeless, you know. And it's one thing to set up and to do that, like, we're not gonna push you, we're not gonna press you, but then just to keep doing it when you're 1-0 down in the second half, and then you can see the second goal and you just think, okay,
yeah,
like, there's no reaction, there's no nothing,
no,
like, and it wasn't even like before that first goal, oh wow, they're knocking the door down, like it's coming. It was just, oh, here's a corner, oh wait, they've scored. Like, it was just like, oh, that's come out of nowhere. And then it happened again. And there's sort of stories within the story. Of course, I mean, Ibanez was basically the man at fault on both of the 2 goals they conceded, and he's the one who scores the header that turns things back in their direction. I think all of our English listeners, those who think Tammy Abraham should have gone to the World Cup, well, yeah, pretty miserable first half of the season, but so far in not even 2 games, he played 30 minutes against Bologna, but the last 2 games, he's basically had the decisive contribution in both of them, because he headed off the line to stop Roma from dropping points against Bologna on Wednesday, and then he scores the winner here, which is, I mean, it's a weird goal because it's a well-taken volley by Abraham. You've got to react quickly to that coming at you at close range. But actually, the header before from Matic, he's not just like a little bit unmarked, Mina. He's just like, here's Nemanja Matic, the sort of famously slow Nemanja Matic, who's also not small and therefore not someone you'd think would get lost in the middle of the area, just on his own, just unmarked. And if his header had been better, then I guess Abraham wouldn't have been required. It was strange. It was really strange. And you're right. You mentioned it about Roma. Roma are extremely good at set pieces and at converting them. They have got a lot of them this season. Although when we talk about those percentages, part of the reason they've got such a big percentage of goals scored from set pieces is because they don't score from open play. So it's like that's the only way they're going to hurt you sometimes. And for Milan to get caught out like that twice, it's really bad. It's really bad for Milan if they're a team that aspires to win the league, I think.
Well, this is, I think, that the problem is firstly is that you know that about Roma. You know that firstly from open play, they're not that interesting to watch. We obviously have noticed the problems that happen with Zaniolo. We know that a lot of the time they're not deadly. This is actually a recurring theme at the moment in Serie A. I mean, bad defending, which 24 goals conceded by Inter, 18 conceded by Milan in 17 matches. If you are trying to win the Scudetto, this is not the way to go, right? And certainly not the way that they did this when they won the Scudetto. They had the best defense. So I'm a little bit shocked by this, but at the same time, you know, it's important to note that there are absences. And so I understand that Pioli can't, you know, he's trying to stretch the squad as much as possible, and sometimes it doesn't work out, and I do get that. But there's another point here, which is you dominated possession. I mean, they had 70% of the possession in the first half, lots of shots. And what worries me about these two sides is that, you know, Inter and Milan, is that a lot of the opportunities are being wasted up front. And then when you combine that with a bad defense, this is where the problems are happening. And it's almost like these teams are so brilliant, but like, you know, they're so interesting to watch, so well prepared tactically. And then there's this major flaw, which is we'll create 100, we'll score maybe 1 or 2, you know, and then concede those 2 because we're not actually very attentive at the back. And this is where you're having this crazy roller coaster of a ride because you don't feel that you can rely on them at all. You don't know what's going to happen between, you know, a Monza side or a Roma side. It could be a big team, it could be a small team. You don't feel safe right now watching either side play. And that is one thing that I think has been a recurring theme. And I just feel like either you figure out how to actually be a little bit more effective going forward and scoring the opportunities that you do create, or figure out how to shore up that defense. But it's got to be one or the other. And these major flaws are just ruining everything that when it comes to watching it.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to get to Juventus. I mean, it's classically Allegri's sort of comment, and he said it before, like the best defense wins Serie A. I mean, I'm not talking about he said it 5 minutes ago. I'm talking about he said this during previous winning runs at Juventus when he was proving it. And I haven't checked this in a while, so I off the top of my head, I'm not sure if I'd be right for the last few seasons, but I know that a few seasons ago, I went and had a look through it, and it was something like 8 or 9 out of 10 of the previous seasons, the team that conceded the fewest goals did win Serie A. So, like, there is a strong correlation there. Now, you can go too far with correlation.
The only team that won it without doing that was, in fact, Sarri's Juve.
There you go. And I think you can go too far with that correlation, because often, actually, if you look at it, the team that has conceded the lowest goals and won the league, I think in a lot of those seasons had also scored the most goals. So, like, a lot of the times you just had very dominant teams that were just doing both, that were just better than everyone.
That's true.
So, like, it can be a little bit sort of too simplistic just to hone in on that. But this is a good way, I would say, to not win leagues, is to, when you're in positions that are winning positions, to not win games. Whatever else is or isn't the big picture, this was a game that Milan had won at 2-0 up. They had won this game. They just had to see it out, and they didn't. And of course, there's individual sort of stories within that. I think no question, losing Mike Maignan for so much this season has been a huge blow. Mike Maignan it's been, when he arrived at Milan, was a hugely impactful player, not just for the saves he made, actually, but for how much he contributed to distribution. Tatarusanu is not as good, but it doesn't change this story in this game. This game was a game you had won and you didn't win it. You just threw it away.
Well, I guess the other question that I have on this topic is that there are absences for Milan, and we have to recognize those. Is this a case of, at the end of the day, this is the best that we can expect until they have, a better squad and perhaps better replacements, so that when you do take off Benazer or you do take off Giroud, you feel like the players that can come on can make the difference? Or is this a case of, I don't know, because, I watch Spalletti and I feel like he's just made every single player in Napoli amazing to bring on. You don't ever feel that there is a second squad. Like, the whole squad's brilliant. Whichever sub comes on makes the difference most often than not. And so is this a case of, like Pioli's not doing enough with these squad players? But obviously it's really hard to get people on the same level as Benacer, right? Or on the same level as Giroud with all his experience. So do they just need, is it a market question? Or is it a case of, we know obviously that there's problems there if you're conceding this many goals, especially last minute goals. So there's problems there that he has to respond to, Stefano Pioli. But I also feel like the squad needs a little bit more.
I think some depth would certainly not go amiss. And I think, for instance, if we're going to talk about the centre-back position specifically, has Matteo Gabbia really pushed on in the way that people weren't hoping he would? And if not, then have you got enough depth centre-back? It's funny, Mina, because I think instinctively, think about where they were on the way to win the league title. It was a complete shortage of centre-backs. Kalulu comes in to play centre-back and it comes together and it works. Funnily enough, I think between Kalulu and Tomori right now, I think Tomori is more the problem than Kalulu, and that's not a great place to be. I'm not making a damning indictment of Tomori as a footballer, because I think he's a great footballer. I just think he's not been as good this season as last season. And I can't give you a complete explanation of that. There's always lots of things that go on, but he just hasn't. It's just sort of visible, I guess. You can see that he's not as good as last season. And so depth would help. Having more options would help. In the long run, maybe part of developing a young footballer is to say, well, we're going to stick through it, because Kalulu and Tomori can be your partnership for years, right? If you keep that partnership together, it can be there for years. And maybe sometimes you just have to say, well, part of learning is messing up, and this is a learning experience. But if you want to win the league, you can't throw away 2-goal leads against teams that are not easy to beat and you had beat. I just keep going back to that, Mina. We can talk about squad depth. We can talk about what would help them in the long run. I think Napoli's squad depth is a massive asset to them this season. But this weekend specifically, I can't bring myself to make a big narrative out of, it was the squad depth, it was this, it was that. You had won this game. And
absolutely,
easily, frankly, Roma were not in this game until the final 3 minutes. So it's not a big sort of picture story for me. That's a you messed up this game story.
Can Roma make top 4?
I don't know what to make of them after this game, because I didn't think they were good for most of it.
This is precisely it. I don't think they've been good for a long time. And this inability, actually, the 10 out of 21 goals doesn't impress me. It makes me feel worried about their inability to create from open play. Does that make sense? I don't look at this and I think, oh, wow, what a fabulous team from set pieces. One of the things that I take from that is how bad everyone is at actually defending them, but also that, why are you not doing enough from open play? Why are you not doing everything you can to create a little bit of danger? And to sit back and not do it until the end is very opportunistic. And don't get me wrong, I love opportunistic teams, but it angers me because I think Rome is better than this. So I think that's where it all really stems from. Interestingly enough, if we are going to talk about teams conceding in the last minute, there's obviously Lazio as well. But another match that was interesting to watch was Monza versus Inter, because nobody expected this to be going this way, especially not after the pulling off that beautiful performance against Napoli. that one told me a lot as well. I listened to your voice now. I thought it was fantastic. And I love how you stuck up for yourself because, we were talking about it, whether it would be an interesting lots of goals or not. And you were like, listen, this didn't go exactly the way she said, all right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But what I thought was interesting about that match in specific as well was how many chances that Inter created that they didn't take at the time. I was like, there were just so many that you just thought they could have really been up like by quite a lot of goals, but they just were not being efficient enough. But they were stunning to watch from a in terms of determination, the way that they played the game, the tackles, combative, beautiful technically, tactically, so understood the game plan. And I love how they changed it against Monza. This is one thing that I do really respect about Inzaghi, is that he always has a perfect game plan for the opponent that he has studied, and he meticulously prepares it and organizes his squad to try to do that. What is his problem, perhaps, is sometimes he relies too much on fulfilling this plan without thinking that obviously mistakes will happen or problems will happen. So what do we do then? There is never a fallback in that sense. This was an interesting game. Inter obviously went up quite quickly. Monza equalized almost immediately, and then Lautaro Martinez showed you the beauty of an opportunistic striker, jumped on a mistake, got the second goal, and you thought this was going to be, it wasn't going to be long before they managed to get another one, even though Monza is a very good team. As it happens, at the very end, we know that Inter could have gone up 3-1 up. At the very end, but they could have gone 3-1 up, but the referee blew his whistle, which meant that Cherby's goal wasn't recognised. And this was a huge refereeing error, so much so that the referee then went on to apologise to Inter for his mistake. And Monza then scores the equaliser at the very end and nearly actually gets the winner too. This is another, would you call this a capitulation, or would you call this, because I found it rather interesting reading some of the analysis from our journalist friends in Italy. And I thought it was really interesting because a lot of it was, he's unlucky, right? I mean, he lost Barella and he lost Çalhanoğlu, and this was Gazzetta's response to this. He was unlucky. This was the best he could do. And frankly speaking, the referee made a giant error. It could have been 3-1 up. I mean, yes, they shouldn't concede. At least the next piece of analysis talked about the defensive problems. But for me, if I'm an Inter fan here, I am very, very angry. I am very angry by the level of defending on those goals as well. I'm angry with the way that I didn't manage to make the most of my good moments that I did have in the match here, even against Napoli, to be honest with you. And I feel like maybe my sort of takeaways from that match is not the same as everyone else.
Yeah, I thought Inter were really disappointing in general. Yes, they could have won, but it felt like exactly, like I said before, like exactly what Acerbi said it would be. Like, okay, like we've beaten Napoli, that's good. Doesn't mean anything if you don't win the next game. They played with exactly that sort of, I don't know, that level of sort of like presumption about them that this should have been easier, and that's what cost them, I think.
Oh, so you think it's a little bit of arrogance?
Yeah, I think so. I think they didn't. I think if they played this game with the level of intensity they faced Napoli, they wouldn't have run into the problems they did. That's not to disrespect Monza. I just think that they played that Napoli game so well. And yes, if it was that level of performance, I think Inter are better than Monza. I do. I think that's just true. And I think there is circumstance in there. And of course, like, I do have a lot of sympathy for the situation with the goal. I mean, Gagliardini is penalised for a foul when in fact you've just got two Monza players basically tripping over each other, and it's not his fault. And it is, as Saki acknowledged, like they're told to not blow their whistles now. They're supposed to wait. And if it is a foul, then they can let VAR sort that out afterwards. So it's a mistake. But that doesn't get you off the hook for then just not picking up Caldirola, former Inter Academy graduate, of course, Caldirola, and not sort of seeing the game through to the end. I think there was lots again that sort of goes into that at the end of it. I think that injuries in the midfield weaken them during the course of this game. Obviously, Barella going out and Çalhanoğlu going out, that changes your midfield quite a lot. Gagliardini is one of those players who's been at Inter a long time now, and I think for a long time we've been pretty aware that he's not really up to the level they're looking for. Just a bit too sort of ponderous, a bit too plodding, which is a shame because I remember when he was a young player thinking highly of him and thinking he could go somewhere, but he hasn't. And I think perhaps on the goal itself, there was a part of me, I don't know if you thought this, Mina, that I think it maybe highlighted to me a bit that, okay, maybe you needed to move on from Handanovic. Handanovic was letting a lot of goals in, but Onana's definitely not the answer either. Like that was, it felt to me like that was an avoidable goal at the end.
But I didn't. You felt. I thought so too, but no one was really speaking about that, and I was like, I don't know whether I'm being extremely hard on him, you know. But I certainly felt that
it wasn't much talked about. Yeah.
For me, as soon as I watched that, I was like, what is Onana doing? You know? And I know that there's obviously like, there is a deflection, and there is like, I still think you need to be better when it comes to that. It's really difficult to analyze this inside, because I look at them and one of the things again is squad depth, right? It is unlucky to obviously lose two good midfielders and not even have Brozovic on the bench. So we're talking about three guys that weren't available at the end. You only had really, I guess, you know, it is a problem. I understand that, but you look at this Inter-side and it's like you said, they had won this match. They should have. It's interesting to me that a team like Monza, without Rovella and Sensi, right, like their creativity, okay, who had basically done everything they could, they threw the kitchen sink, tried every single tactic they could, went to a 4-2-4, changed their players, changed their personnel, went, you know, into trying to direct it a little bit more, could come back in this game. And the level of defending, the level of disinterest that there was at the back I found it quite shocking, to be honest. And I'm talking about players that I think are really brilliant to watch. I don't understand that. And to let, Luca Caldirola, who is exactly a youth prospect, who's a defender, never thought that he would be in this position where he would be scoring against his team, although apparently he's a Milan fan, so that must have gone down really well. And I don't know, there's a part of me that's like, is Inzaghi not very good at just really getting this team to work on this mentality, to be consistent, to not see the Pazza Inter side of it? But when I see how he assembles the team and the way the tactics change, you know, the low block, the trying to sort of, you know, like constantly counterattack Napoli, knowing exactly how to shield, how to cage Guevara, how to shield Lobotka from orchestrating. And then this one here, where it's a higher center of gravity and just always, you know, like pushing forward. His organization, his studying of the opponents is always brilliant, but the execution isn't. And obviously we do have to mention the fact that they do create chances, but they're not taking them because Xhaka can't play every single game. Lautaro Martinez is a streaky player. He's either brilliant or not. And obviously Lukaku, who's gotten a lot of flack for his substitute appearance, although he is injured, so he's probably not playing at the highest level right now. But I mean, for a player that has costed a lot to come on loan, quite frankly speaking, and one who wants to stay, there's a part of me that's a little bit worried that we're not going to really get back the Lukaku that we saw under Antonio Conte. Do you feel that way about him?
Yeah, I feel like that about a few players there at the moment. Not that we won't ever get them back, but that they're just not at where they should be, right? Like, I think the thing with Milan is they really stuffed up this weekend, but I still tend to think that Milan, when I look at them, I think this team is more than the sum of its parts. And I think Inter, this was not true in midweek, but I often look at them and think they're less than the sum of their parts.
Yeah.
And that's a reflection on the manager, because look at the team sort of objectively. Skriniar, Acerbi and Bastoni, that's a good enough back three. Like, that's 2/3 of the same back three that was keeping clean sheets every game under previous management. So why should that not work? And Acerbi is the guy you wanted and brought in. And midfield, I think the injuries are definitely a thing in this game, so I don't mean to minimise them. I think they did impact this game. But certainly your starting midfield, Barella, Çalhanoğlu, Mkhitaryan, and then when he's there, Brozovic is very strong. You know, you've got in this game coming off the bench, both Dumfries and Gerstens came in again. I thought Gerstens had a good game against Napoli when he came off the bench. There was a lot of excitement amongst Inter fans of, oh, we've finally seen the real Gerstens. Well, no impact here again. So are we, or are we just still never going to see him? It feels like you go through the whole team and you think, this should be better. This should be better. And I think that's why still, if you wanted me to pick a Serie A team to play a one-off game, other than Napoli, I might still pick this Inter team. But do I pick them to get into the title race? No, because I don't trust them to not do this. semi-regularly through the season. And that's the conundrum with them for sure. I think they're capable of so much more than they give us a lot of the time. And seeing how good they can be so soon before this game only highlights it. But I do want to, before we move on from this game, Mina, just point out the other great sort of spectacle of this game, Adriano Galliani in the stands, who I think was almost more entertaining to watch at times than the actual game itself, going through all of those emotions as vividly as anyone could.
Yeah, I mean, that was that was just brilliant to watch, right? I mean, the way he celebrated it, you would think his life was, hanging in the balance if it wasn't for a goal. I mean, there's a part of me that's just, I wonder if it's just Inter's just a really emotional side. You could see it towards the end when they were just so angry, and you just thought there isn't this. Inter don't operate as a team that is just void of emotion and that just has to win or has that. It surrenders to whatever emotion they have at every point. And that for me is something that the coach needs to address. I feel like on a tactical level, he has plans and he has ideas that are very good and very sophisticated. But in order to be this perfect coach, there needs to be more done on man management in that sense, because it's a problem that keeps coming up. And so obviously there's something that needs to be addressed, especially with the way that they're defending. It's like you said, they have, for me, the best backline. I don't think there's a backline that matches them right now at Serie A. When I think of the names on their own on that sheet, I would love to have any of them, to be honest with you. But no clean sheets in 9 away matches. Only twice away from home have they conceded only 1 goal in the game. Most of the time it's 2 or over. I mean, that's really poor at this moment. And there's been a lot of games.
We can agree or disagree about whether that's the best, but it certainly shouldn't be a defence that's conceding 24 goals in 17 games. Like, it certainly shouldn't be like one of the worst in the top half of the table. It really shouldn't.
Yeah.
The worst in the top half of the table. Sorry, not one of the.
No, the absolute worst. So it's incredible that, and so I don't know whether this is coaching, and I wonder if you sort of just imagine if it's a different coach, we might not get some of the ability to create as many chances as they do under a different coach, but perhaps a little bit of better balance. I would say that's where you would go. But as for Monza, Palladino, in-game management, the guy's good. He's really done quite a lot for Monza. Just the way that he always reads the game and knows how to change things. Ranocchia, I thought was perfect to bring on. So very, I don't know. I don't know what to think of Inter now. Can they actually really mount a title challenge, or are they just always going to be this kind of side that you just feel are a little bit weak on an emotional level and maybe not enough of a professional sort of distance from emotions to really get to the end?
Yeah, I mean, just to pick up on Monza, as you said them, like, definitely like worth mentioning that the really solid first season so far in Serie A. I mean, they're 15th, but they're a good 9 points clear of the relegation zone right now, and on track for something close to 40 points. It's good work by them, and definitely they deserve their sort of credit in this story. It's so easy to focus on everything Inter did wrong, but as you said earlier, Mina, they could have won this game in the end, with crazy as that is, with how things ended. And yeah, some nice performances in there. It was nice seeing Pessina have a good performance. He was a player I was really interested in when he signed there, and how he was going to get on. And I didn't think he sort of hit the ground running quite as I'd hoped. I think more recently he's been improving, and Giulia as well, as you mentioned. So some nice performances in there for Monza. For Inter, do I think they can win the league? No, I think they don't have the consistency for it. I think I could sooner see Inter, and I'm not saying this will happen, but I could sooner imagine them in a Champions League semi-final than I could winning the league. I think that's how I sort of see this team right now. I could sooner see them having that like one-off good games rather than consistently the performance they need to get into the top of the table.
Yeah, I would have to agree with that. Right, so then let's move on to obviously Juventus' match against Udinese, because now they're in second place.
A team who maybe could win the league, Mina.
Yes, I think so.
Love how your face changed when I said that. Yes. Mina believes.
I do, I really do. I love Allegri. And I feel so ashamed of having not stuck up for him more in the beginning and actually gone with everything and thought, yeah, maybe he is a little bit bad, And now I'm like, oh, thank you for always coming through, and yeah, I'm a very, very happy Juventus fan at the moment. Not because I think anyone's playing good football. God forbid. I think it's actually one of the worst footballs that I'm watching right now. Like half the time I'm like, oh damn it, Juve's playing. It's not even an I'm curious to see. Like I'm never curious to see. Like it's dumb. Okay, I'm not even gonna try to make this around. I wrote this post yesterday about where they were after every round this season, and I wrote at the top cue Jaws music, because that's what I think they are. I feel like they're the monster that just lurks, and even when you think you don't need to worry about them, they pop up and they're like, hello, and then everyone always chooses to post like Allegri's cheesy grin, like, hello, like I'm here again, don't forget me, But this was another win over Udinese. Udinese is a really astonishing team, like fascinating for me in every way. They started the season in such fantastic fashion, so capable when it came to like producing, especially, last minute goals, great substitutes off the bench, changing things around, observing in the first half. And then all of a sudden just completely fell off. But I did think that they played well in this match. I thought they started the game really, really well. They were missing Deulofeu, and that is a big thing for them when it comes to their creativity. And then there was this Juventus side that was a little bit boring in the first half, did what they, I guess, needed to do, which is lull them into a false sense of security and let Udinese see what they can do. And then the second half comes along and it was like, yeah, right, now we've just got to win this match. So come on, boys, let's do this. Brilliant changes. Paredes. When Paredes comes on, I'm always a little bit worried that something's going to happen. Some sort of incitement of violence will happen. But he was brilliant. That pass, which is always facilitated when you have beautiful runners and people who actually are mobile up front, like Chiesa. Chiesa, 50% in terms of his conditioning right now. But speed of thought, speed of execution, that control, the touch, everything about him was perfection to deliver for Danilo. And they get the one goal again. And they're in second. They're playing Napoli. No goals conceded in their last 8 games. 12 clean sheets. And quite frankly, a Rabiot that's playing lights out at the moment. I mean, like, I just do, like, I'm willing to pay this man from my own, like, I don't know, obviously I have no money to pay him, but like, he has just, I mean, in this particular match as well, you know what I think is most fascinating about this, and obviously I'm a big fan of Allegri. This defense that everyone's speaking about, clean 12 clean sheets, okay, no goals conceded in their last 8 matches. He did this with Rugani as the only centre back, Danilo and Alexandro alongside him in a 3-man back line. They have played 6 different formations in 17 matches. That defense has constantly changed, whether it's been Bonucci or Gatti or Rugani or whoever it is, whomever comes in. Bremer obviously has done a really great job. And this is why I come back to why it annoys me when people don't recognize Allegri as a good coach. Because this is a man who finds a way of doing things. And then it doesn't matter who the personnel is afterwards. He hasn't relied on a single player. There is not a top 10 player in this team. If you look at the statistics, there isn't a guy who's always scoring goals. There isn't a guy who's always assisting either. They are not top 5 in most things when it comes to possession or duels won or anything like that. They are just a team that work based on what he has provided as the blueprint. And then you can just replace whoever it is, Fagioli, Locatelli today, or Miretti, or Rabiot, or whoever it is. And the job is being done. And this is without Vlahovic. This is with a team that has been constantly changing. And that tells you that when there is a blueprint and an idea to work with, that maybe it doesn't matter necessarily who's always picked to play.
I really love your Jaws analogy, Mina, because I'm with you. Like, I definitely feel like Juventus is this sort of the big bad, just sort of looming on the horizon. It's very them. And do you ever see the advertising campaign for that movie? I never actually saw the movie, but there was a movie called Smile. And they had this sort of advertising campaign where it was always a crazy, someone smiling with a really crazy looking smile and their head tilted down, their eyes wide. And they did this slightly viral advertising campaign where they put people in the stands, even at sports games, in really obvious spots, so they get picked up by the cameras doing the crazy smile. And there's something about Allegri with his big grin where he can just look like he's like doing the evil smile, like coming for you. And and I mean, honestly, like being blunt about it, Mina, and geez, Simon might tell me off, I'll get us an explicit ranking, but like I thought they were crap against Cremonese. I thought they were really bad and they were just lucky on Wednesday. Like we can talk about consecutive clean sheets, and that doesn't happen by accident, right? Like you don't do it 8 times in a row by accident. But some of the games on the way have been not good. And the Cremonese game was a prime example of a game where I can't give you like a logic to they deserve to win that game. They did. I thought they didn't deserve to win against Cremonese. They got a really nice free kick from Milik at the end of it. But before that, they could have conceded. Dessers could have scored. A tiny bit of luck goes the other way and they don't win that game. They don't keep a clean sheet. I thought the Udinese game was more controlled.
I'm sorry, I'm going to come back at that. I'm just going to come back at that particular one. And I think that they were, you could say that, which I agree with you, because they were crap all the way through. Yeah. But I also think that there's another thing about it in which they weren't lucky, because when you do build within that side that desire to always be so strict defensively and to not concede, you always give yourself a chance to score a goal, even if it's a lucky one. Secondly, what I love about Allegri, and again, once again, is how much he has spent of his free time with the likes of Milik and Vlahovic afterwards on his own, just talking and seeing free kicks and discussing that with them. That is extra coaching that he has done to make sure that they make the most from those chances. Again, you never know when to rely on that. And that's something that I love so much about Don Carlo Ancelotti, right? It's he works on specific things so that you can always fall back on them in certain games. And I think Allegri does the same.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, I think there's certainly something real in there, getting everyone to buy into the fino alla fine, right? Like get everyone to buy into this until the end mentality where we don't give up and we will keep looking for that chance until the end. And frankly, like that's the story of this week, right? Like big teams not seeing games through to the end. Well, Juventus can finish, like they can finish a game. They know how to get across the line. I thought they were better against Udinese. I thought actually this, to finish what I was thinking, like the weekend performance was more impressive to me because I thought the difference was that I think Cremonese could have scored. I think they could have scored more than once. Udinese never really gave Szczesny a hard time. And that was different. And so if you're sort of starting from that platform as well, we don't concede and then we try to win. I found this more compelling than the Cremonese game. And I also think that when I think about who I can see pushing Napoli, well, why shouldn't it be the team that is joint second and that has scope to get better, right? Chiesa is scope for improvement. Chiesa on his own gives you the chance to be a better football team than you've been up till now. And it was a great assist. It was a lovely, like, chest down and control. And it was that moment of like, oh yeah, like, we've seen this before. Like we've seen you do that move before. And it's exciting. Like I love seeing Chiesa back and thinking about, even though we're as far from a World Cup as we can be, like the possibilities for Italy and all of that as well. So it's wonderful that he's back and who knows, Mina, like I keep thinking this, like, could they really challenge for the title? If you can keep a clean sheet against Napoli in whatever it is, 4 days from now, 5 days from now, then yes, you have to be taken very seriously indeed. Even if you don't win that game, I think if you can keep a clean sheet in that game, you're making a real statement, because it's one thing to keep clean sheets against some of these teams, but to shut out Osimhen and Kvaratskhelia, we've seen it can be done, but it's not something that every team can do. So I think really, really fascinating game coming up on Friday, and I'm excited to see how that goes. But I also agree, having said with that, I agree with what you said before. Juventus can be impressive without being fun to watch at the same time, and they have not often been fun to watch.
No, they really haven't. It is interesting because it just sort of goes to show you how much things can change when you actually have a midfield, or just even one who can make the difference, like Rabiot is making at the moment. But yeah, I do just. It's a year ago exactly today that Federico Chiesa was taken off against Roma. So it's been a whole year of just absolute, like, a disaster for somebody who likes to watch football, to not watch this man really sort of grow into the player that we all think that he can be. So for that reason, and for Like I do really want him back, although there's no Euro anytime soon, there's no World Cup anytime soon, but I just feel like as much as we can get out of him for the time being would be interesting. I mean, it would be really interesting to watch this match, obviously on Friday, when Napoli welcome Juventus, and it's obviously two different ideologies. Inter have laid the blueprint as to what you can do to try to defeat Napoli. Whether or not Juventus can do that will be very interesting. Obviously, Napoli played against Sampdoria. They managed to achieve a 2-0 victory. Sampdoria had a player sent off. This was quite an emotional match, obviously, as we have lost Sinisa Mihajlovic and Gianluca Vialli. And there was so many banners, so many tributes to both men. Stankovic was standing with the sons of Mihajlovic on the sidelines, holding them and close to him as they remembered their father. Obviously, lots of tributes as well for Gianluca Vialli and everything that he managed to accomplish from Sampdoria. To be honest with you, I find it really hard to talk about this again, because if we just mention the Sampdoria letter alone, I think I'll be off like a rocket, you know? But it was an interesting game. I'm going to get straight into it. Controversial penalty awarded to Napoli, which, as the gods of football wanted, Audero managed a beautiful save on that. But of course, nothing can stop Napoli, and nothing can stop Victor Osimhen, who is right now, I think, certainly my favorite player in Serie A. I'm obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with how grateful he is to be a football player. So he gives 1,000% in every match, and I just find that so respectable. I don't know, I'm obsessed with him. I thought Politano was very good in this match. Napoli weren't maybe as beautiful as they always are. There's something a little bit off at the moment, but obviously still very, very good, right? And you just feel like it will just keep getting better and better, and hopefully they can find their beauty that we saw in the first half of the season that made them unstoppable.
Yeah, imagine if Napoli didn't miss so many penalties. I feel like Napoli, like, all I ever see is Napoli missing penalties. They might, be even further ahead. Look, this was not much of a football game, being honest about it. Rincon sending off certainly didn't make it more competitive, but frankly, these are just two very different calibers of football team right now. Sampdoria, yes, they beat Sassuolo to start the year, which is encouraging, but they're still the only team in all of Serie A that hasn't got to 10 goals yet. I mean, they've scored 8 goals all season. Meanwhile, Napoli have scored, I have to check, but 100, not actually 100, they've scored how many now? They've scored 39, it's pretty ridiculous, the gulf between them. And to me, it felt like it. Yeah, Napoli didn't really play their best football, but after Osimhen scored, the game was never put back into doubt, was it? And again, no. Rincon getting himself sent off certainly didn't make it more likely to be. For me, this was much more about Vialli, and it is difficult because we've both had a good cry about it in our tribute we did the other day. And if anyone wants to hear more of us talking about Vialli, we have done that in an episode on Friday. But it was, the end of the game when Sampdoria, who are having this miserable season, they haven't, won many games at all. Still sort of the full Marassi and singing Vialli's song, which is, it's one of those songs I always think, English fans are much more sort of, I think English football chants are much more creative than Italian football chants. Italian football fans put their creativity into banners, into the choreography and like how they sort of present things there. So the wording isn't particularly clever, but just the sort of the sincerity of it, because they just sing Luca Vialli, Luca Vialli, Luca Vialli, ale. Ti amiamo e ti adoriamo. Sei meglio di Pelé, which just means we love you and we adore you. You're better than Pelé. I just thought, like, that's the song they've always sung for him, right? They didn't invent that for the occasion. That's the song they sung for him when he was playing for them. But what a sort of beautiful thing to have 30,000 people singing, we love you and we adore you. Like, it's perfect. Like, and so the awful part of it, like, it's like all the tributes have been so beautiful to him. Everyone's sort of sincerity outpouring of loving for him. And the only thing that's missing is him. And that's how death works. And it's hard. It was a real sort of cathartic thing, I think, for lots of Italian football fans who adored him this weekend. There was a minute's applause everywhere. Juventus, there were songs for him as well. Cremonese, we're recording on Monday. Cremonese have got planned a special shirt with his face on the sleeve, and they're going to be auctioning those off afterwards, with proceeds going towards his foundation, which funds research into ALS and sort of helping improved treatment for that. So some good coming out of the sadness as well. And yeah, it was an emotional weekend, I think, in all of Serie A, and you saw it hit different individuals differently. We all saw Barella look like he was having a bit of a cry in the pre-game as well. And I suppose that all comes to like personal relationships and what he meant to people on a personal level.
I think Barella crying was something that was quite painful to watch when that was happening. And Chiellini's interview, and because Chiellini doesn't really hold his emotion well, and I remember it sort of brought back memories of when he did a mini interview after a Champions League game, in which he talked about Davide Astori, and that was also at the time watching him cry was quite difficult as well, and you feel like a lot of emotions. So yeah, certainly a roller coaster of emotions. We've had some lovely feedback, so thank you to all of those people who wrote back to that specific episode that we recorded. I thought one was specifically interesting. I'm for a reason in this, I identified with this a lot at the time. It was one from Vic Peters that particularly was interesting to me because I identified with it a lot. I had a few people say, like, why is it Gianluca Vialli that has managed to stir up this many emotions, and why, how people react to different things. And grief is just this type of emotion that it masquerades and it comes in different forms and you feel it in different things. And I just, and he said that he didn't, his wife didn't quite understand why he was feeling so emotional at the time. And he was saying that obviously listening to us and seeing how we got so emotional, it made his wife understand a little bit more. And I sort of wanted to show your message, Vic, actually, to some of my to my family who also seemed perplexed by my show of emotions as well at the time. But it is, you could be grieving because you're sympathetic to what his family are feeling, or empathetic towards what this loss means to different people, or simply because you are mourning either the loss of your childhood, the last happy memories, what he presented to you. It's just, Nikki, are you going to start crying? Because
I'm okay. I'm okay.
Okay.
I think I've cried it out.
Yeah, we've cried it out. So yeah, so. Thank you so much to all of those who wrote to us. It is like there's just so many messages. So it was lovely to hear from you.
I just echo that, Mina, because I just think like with that chant, like that's kind of what the thing is. The thing is, it's like it's not just a person people are mourning. It's their own lives.
Of the time.
It's the time that those fans spent cheering for him, watching him on the pitch, and then their personal memories of what that's tied to. They might have gone to games with their family, with their brother, with their father, with their mother, with their sister. And all of those things, I think, play into how you feel about those. So thank you, as Mina said, for all the messages about it. It's hard. We don't get to respond to every message individually on the show, but we do really appreciate them, and we're really grateful for them. There was a really lovely message as well from Meta Sancholo which some really interesting questions about a completely unrelated topic, but we just wanted to acknowledge that message, Meta, because it's a lovely long message, and we're going to come back to that maybe on a future episode, and we'll maybe even set aside some time to talk about that separately.
Just to quickly say, the question was, firstly, we want to say congratulations on being a newlywed and enjoying your honeymoon in Bali, and still
yes,
Chronicles,
of course.
For listening to us. But the question was a little bit like about women in football, and me and Nikki were talking about it as we were discussing your beautiful letter, and we decided it's something that we had so much to say that we just couldn't fit it in to this podcast. So we will try to address it in a separate one to you and to any others who might be interested. Should we do some shout outs?
Yes. Let's do
it. We have, by the way, we've had an influx of new subscribers. So thank you for that. I do hope that so far you are enjoying the Serie A Chronicles. So we just want to welcome in some new subscribers.
We've got a backlog. I don't know why, the list is just, we're doing them a bit at a time, otherwise we take forever.
I'll just start with the first two. Thank you to Matt, who is just Matt. So all elusive, we can put you together with a nice growing list of just one namers. And to David Colosimo, thank you for joining.
And thank you to Paolo Antonio Fenu, to Paul Naylor, and to Nikolai Lindeberg. Thank you all so much for supporting Serie A Chronicles, for helping us make this show, which we love making. I, off the back of some of these correspondences we've just been talking about, want to throw out 2 questions to our listeners for this week that you can get in touch with us about. Very important questions. Number 1, have you got great guilty pleasure TV that you can recommend to me, because I'm between series right now? And number 2, can anybody top Miet's missive from Bali? I mean, that's a pretty cool place to have people listening to our podcast. If you're listening to our podcast somewhere even cooler than Bali, I want to hear about it and know where you're listening from. But otherwise, please do find us on Twitter at Mina Rizuki, at Nikki Bandini, and follow Serie A Chronicles on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. We'll be back next week, unless we come back with some voice notes sooner, which we probably will.
Ciao.
Serie A Chronicles is a Media Chronicles production.